Welcome to Through the Trauma podcast. My name is Amber Larkins, published photographer, storytelling expert, visual artist, entrepreneur, speaker, and coach. This podcast was born from one question: how do I get inspiring stories of triumph out to the people who need to hear them the most? Come with me, enter my world, where lives are getting changed, heroes are getting developed, and greatness is being achieved. All right, welcome to Through the Trauma podcast. I am Amber Larkins, your host, and today I have with me Mr. Aaron Heuy. He helps families in deep crisis. He's basically a crisis consultant. Aaron, first of all, let me just welcome you and thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you, Amber. Thanks for allowing me an opportunity to talk to your audience. I just really appreciate the chance.
Since the first time we talked, I was really excited to get you on here. I feel even more compelled now because the future is in the hands of our youth, right? And it's up to us to raise them and do the right thing by them. And before we get into all of that, why don't you go ahead and just share with us more about what you do?
Thanks, Amber. What I affectionately call a family crisis consultant. Another way to say that is I'm a parent coach. My niche market are parents who are in crisis. I ran a residential adolescent treatment center, 4-month minimum program where they would literally live in the facility that my wife and I opened and operated together. My very first client, when I opened a martial arts school back in the year 2000, my very first client was a young 6-year-old boy who had tried to kill himself, and his mom had caught him on his third attempt and asked me, "Can you help?" And so my whole career in being a mentor, not only to children and teens, but then to families and parents, began with a very desperate situation. And because I was the martial arts instructor, because I was the mentor, because my 3 hobbies in life are martial arts, outdoor survival, and emergency medicine, which pretty much will tell everybody that I don't really trust the world to keep me safe. And that's a big part of my own childhood and what my life was like as a drug addict. I am in long-term recovery. I'm 25 years sober after 14 years of using. I was raised without my biological father, an amazing dad who showed up and did everything right, except he wasn't my biological father. I was sexually assaulted at the age of 18 by my best friend, who had the same last name as my biological father, the same name as my biological father. You and I were talking off air, Amber, about how nothing seems to be an accident when you really look at the esoteric and existential concept of it. I hold true to that in that any relationship I have been in, I have realized it's a way of me trying to reconcile the painful, traumatizing ones, including with a best friend who hurt me to the extent and level that my biological father had hurt me. I was bullied mercilessly as a kid. This martial arts path has been the golden thread through my whole life, and I've utilized it to find sanctuary and home in myself. You can call me self-centered. I'll respond, that just means I'm centered in myself. And for me, that's been a good thing since I got sober. That turned into being a mentor for teens, wanting to get sober and not wanting to get sober. And then that changed into teenagers, not changed, and then I added teens who self-harm, teens who have been suicidal, teens with mental health problems. So as a family crisis consultant, I tend to be the person they call when their kid is OD'd, when their kid is attempted suicide, when the addiction is so bad that they've stolen the car. CPS is now on the scene, and I'm the person who comes in and we get the family working. We had amazing success as a treatment facility, my wife and I. And when we closed down 2 years ago because of fires in Estes Park, we realized that our success had not just come from doing really cool stuff with teenagers. And we did awesome stuff with the teens, but everybody does. But we did interventions with parents. We heavily relied on parent involvement and intervention to facilitate the child's sobriety or healing or recovery. And that made the difference. That's what gave us the highest success rate in the United States. So that's the work I have continued since the facility shut down. So when the family's got a big crisis, I'm the one they call. And that's the work that I continue to do to this day.
And this is so needed these days. Culture and the society is pushing these norms on kids that really isn't norms. It's a lot for our kids to carry. And then we see this manifesting in certain ways in our communities and in our culture, but it really takes someone to step in and help navigate through this, because our world is changing so quickly. Media and with the electronics and all these different things that kids are on these days, it changes exponentially fast. So to have someone, I feel like yourself, to come in and help navigate through the hardships, the crisis times, I think it's so needed. And I love what you're doing.
Well, thank you. You said something, Amber, that I think is really important, that I think starts this conversation off. Because you revealed a basic truth about brain chemistry, brain development in children, and society at large. Because information is speeding up. Access to information is at lightning speed. You and I were talking off the air about, making sure our computers were plugged directly into the internet so that we had lightning fast connection to the information that's being transferred back and forth at a rapid pace. Access. One of the things I have heard is that, I'm 54 years old, and when I was a child and it was summertime, I was out of the house in the morning at the public library. That's where we met. That's where we hung out. That's where we played Dungeons and Dragons. That's where we met our friend set, got on our bikes and rode around town. My parents would have never sent me to the public library if 3 out of every 10 books was hardcore pornography. Yet that's the internet. 30% of the internet is pornography. Now add to that the access to violent material, add access to indulgence of negative behaviors and negative emotional experiences. We're looking at a 25% struggle rate with teenagers. And then we have the audacity to ask why, or to say how this generation is just not as resilient. My answer to that one is duh. Like look at because what you said is this information is speeding up. The access is instantaneous, but you know what hasn't changed is human development, human brain chemistry. That hasn't changed. And we're not designed to handle this much at that age. Now, let's add on top of that, putting posters up in their walls of their schools, telling them how the world's going to end if they don't recycle. Now, let's add to that, every couple of months, we teach everybody to hide, run, or fight when somebody walks into your school with a weapon. Like, of course they're not resilient. Let's add to that that as parents, we give them trophies for losing, and we celebrate them graduating from 2nd to 3rd grade and 3rd to 4th grade and 4th to 5th grade. And if we're going to constantly play the goalie for our children so that they don't have to deal with life's challenges, and then throw challenges at them that they're not designed or developmentally able to handle, like pornography, a person with a rifle walking through their schools, of course they're not as resilient as we were. But we wouldn't have been had we been dealing with what they are. And we're facilitating them not actually having to deal with some of the things that we had to deal with. Conflict. Conflict is a normal part of life. And it's hard. Violence is terrible. It's the disconnect of humanity. Yet they watch it all day long on the internet. So what do we expect of them? That's what we have to answer when we're dealing with parents saying, why is my child depressed, anxious, using drugs? Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you be if you had to deal with the crap they have to deal with? Adults can't even get along online. We disagree about something and we're bullying each other on Facebook, but yet they shouldn't? Come on. Like this is the part of this crisis work that is not the therapeutic tell me about your mother, but it's the mirrors up portion where we say, before we point fingers at the younger generation, let's mirrors up and take a real good look at what's happening, what we're modeling, what we can change first. Because if we want our kids to change, we change and we show them how. If we want our kids to do better with conflict, then we do better with conflict and we show them how. You go first, you first. And that's hard and it's work and we're scared and we're afraid and we're exhausted. And then we're asked to start the work when our kid is smoking pot, when our kid is cutting on themselves, when our kid keeps sneaking out of the house and stole my car and called CPS and told them I was abusive and made up some cockamamie tale and now I'm being investigated. Yeah, you got to start the change. They're not gonna, they're a child.
Yeah. It's like my idea is getting to the root of problems, right? So we ask, why? Well, why is that? Well, why is that? Well, why is that? Until we get to the bottom of the problem. And this has been something that, especially in relation to the youth, it's been something that's been on my heart and on my mind. In which you and I were talking before we got on here about a tragedy that had happened here in our community. And I shared with you, then you shared with me, and one of the resounding things that we're talking about is that this doesn't happen here. But we live in a world where it's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's at alarming rates. And so we have to, somebody somewhere has to take a step back and say, why is this happening? Well, why is this happening? And I'll tell you something that really bothers me, especially coming from adults, is to label kids. I had another guest on the podcast and he was sharing, like, he used the term throwaway. He felt like a throwaway. And I think this is a problem. I look at things and I'm like, and I try my best not to be judgmental. I mean, obviously right is right and wrong is wrong in my eyes, but I still, why is someone being wrong? What's causing this in them? And I think at some point as an adult, we have to take a step back and say, how can I be a leader to this person instead of criticizing them or saying they're not worth whatever. This bothers me so bad when I hear adults say this, especially in leadership positions in our churches, in our schools, in whatever type of leadership capacity you have. When you become a leader, especially to a youth, you are to lead that person with integrity, and not just when they're doing good, but when they're doing bad, you put your arm around them and say, hey, what's going on with you? Because the truth of the matter is we live in a time where childhood trauma is at large, and these things could probably be healed if somebody would just care. But then we have no one that cares.
You talk about leadership. There's an interesting point you just brought up about the difference between leadership integrity and leadership ideology. And I think ideology is very alluring and loud and provocative. There's lots of ideology all over the place. Everybody's preaching ideology, but integrity is not something you preach. It's something you live by. And when a child makes a risky decision, a lot of parents automatically go to ideologies. Well, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. Here's a list of reasons why that risky choice is going to lead to a terrible, terrible life. Integrity is based on our value systems. Ideology is based on our belief systems, and beliefs can change, especially based on evidence. Integrity is based on core values, things that don't change unless something extremely drastic happens. And that's not something we lecture about. If you're lecturing about your integrity and your values, then you don't really believe them. That's an ideology that you're trying to convince yourself of. And getting a parent back to living their integrity when their child is struggling, when the community is faltering, when the political climate is playing their game, and we're all sitting back and having to wonder who's lying to us, right? That's when we retreat back to our integrity. Or we grab onto ideology to try to get an identity. Those are the three I's that we're our integrity, our ideology, and our identity. What's your identity as a parent? What's it rooted in? An ideology or an absolute black and white value system that when the kid acts out, you don't have to say, give me that phone. I can't believe you're using this to look at pornography. We do not. In this house, we do not. And I would challenge that, because most likely if you're throwing your finger around in the air, and in body language, this is called the hammer, and you're shaking your finger at your child, you're trying to convince them that this is something that you don't do on the internet, I bet I could find it in your downloads too. Because that's ideology. That's trying to promote a message. Where integrity would have us be able to say, listen, I can't change what you look at online. And by God, I want to, because I don't want you looking at that crap. It's not good for your brain, and it's not real anyway. But I can't control it. And I'm not going to take your phone because I got you that as a gift. So it's not mine to take, it's yours. But I'm not going to pay for your phone coverage anymore, because I'm not willing to pay for pornography. I don't do it for me. Sure as hell ain't doing it for you. So you are welcome to go get your own coverage, but I will no longer be paying for your internet and your cell phone coverage. Now, because I love you, here's a phone with 3 numbers programmed into it that you can call me on in case of emergencies, or just to tell me what an amazing parent I am. But see, that's integrity. That's you sticking to your value system. And guess what, parents? Your children know your value system. You've been expressing it for, I don't know, how old are they? That many years. So what you say about your ideology and what people should and shouldn't do, with all due respect, shut up. Because I would be willing to bet everybody listening to this call right now, tell me one life change you made because of a lecture your parent gave you. Just one. Go ahead. I'll wait. Tell me one thing that you said, by God, my mom is right. That talking to she gave me to for an hour last night, she was right, and I'm changing my ways. Versus the life changes we made based on what our parents did or did not do. How they lived or how they did not live. Mm-hmm. See, that's where our value system is created, in prime experience. Not through a clever lecture with nice fancy words that mom or dad thought up in the moment when they were pissed off. That's ideology. And so if we can step back into our integrity, like you said, Amber, that we step back to the value systems. Because you asked before, when we were talking before we went on air, the school's not responsible for doing this, but some kids don't have a chance, right? Amber, we're talking about the parents' work. We're not talking about the school's work. We're not talking about the church's work. We're not talking about the government's work. We're not talking about the neighbor's work. We're talking about our work as parents. You either live your value system or you don't. And there is no gray area to that. There is not, I don't believe in incongruency. If you say that lying is against your values and you lie, that is totally congruent with who you are. You're a person who says one thing and does another. That's congruent. That's authentic. You are being authentic with it. You're not being inauthentic. So you live your value system each and every day. That's what your children are growing and learning from. And so that's what we need to be able to rely on as adults.
So let's explore this just a little bit, because I am curious. This is a challenging thing. Even, I mean, I will be honest with you, even to myself, because I'm a parent, and navigating through parenting is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. Not gonna lie. But I am curious. So as you navigate through this, how do you challenge parents in a way that says, okay, now I need to challenge myself to step up, especially in the heat of the moment. Because, let's take the example you used. You see your kid looking at porn on the phone, and your first reaction, it's like, it's a reaction.
Right.
You see it and you're like, oh my
That's
God, I
right.
can't, what are you doing?
That's right.
I raised you in church and you did this and this. And, like, those are the things that it's like you're just horrified by the
Right.
situation. So let's explore that for a moment and talk to the
Yeah.
parents about how you can control that. I would love to know myself.
Let's talk about what's real and what's ideal, okay? Because this is where I think parenting coaches and just coaches in general, consultants, therapists, they can really get off on the idea of the enlightenment that they are professing. Being a parent myself, I have a 27 and a 28-year-old. Both are married. One has a kid. There's a reality to it. I've had a parent coach for 13 years because it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And the shoemaker's children go barefoot. Right? I can help you raise your kid, but don't ask me to raise mine. By God, I'm struggling over there. So I got help, right? Okay. So you walk in and here's your beloved 13-year-old who's head of the Sunday school class and doing right by everything and helping little Miss Old Lady cross the street and mom with the dishes and gets out with dad mowing the lawn, and he's playing his part and he's looking at porn, and you catch him. That first reaction, man, that is real, and that's going to happen. And what comes out of your mouth when we are frustrated, afraid, or fearful, the FAF, the fa, like we can't talk. We're like fa. Frustration, afraid, and fatigued. That's our FAF. Your best parenting in those moments is your worst parenting. Right? And let's be honest, and let's allow for that space to exist. And remember, we can always come back later and say, when I walked in and you were looking at that stuff, I lost my mind and I am not proud of what I said. I'm not proud of what I did. I said things that probably made you feel ashamed, which I know better because you're probably feeling ashamed already looking at this stuff. And, this is my bad. I handled that poorly. I was terrified and I was angry. And kiddo, when we're terrified and angry, we don't do our best work. Nobody does. Nobody does. Look at any athlete. When they're terrified and angry, they're not doing their best. Look at any doctor. They probably shouldn't do open heart surgery when they haven't slept. That's not their best work. Now I've had a couple days to think about my reaction, and I just want to say I'm sorry. And I'm not saying it's okay you did that. I don't actually know how I feel about that. I'm confused and I'm scared. And I also understand some things. And so I'm going to take some time and I'm going to go talk to my coach, my therapist. I'm going to go talk to your dad. I'm going to go talk to your mom. And the two of us are going to sit down and really talk about this. And then next Saturday, we're all going to go out for pizza and ice cream. And we'll talk about it then. So try not to worry about it, okay? Now, I did a few things there. I did a few parenting tactics there. I front loaded. Okay, I told my kid what's going to happen next because they don't know. Their brain doesn't tell time until we're like 27 years old. We don't actually tell time. We can read a clock, but that doesn't mean we can tell time. We don't know how long things are away from us. And so I'm creating a safe space for my kid to say, we're going to talk about this. We're not done. But it'll be later, and we're going to go out for pizza. We're going to be, because it's connection before correction. So first thing I did was front load. Second thing I did was connection before correction. We are going to make sure that we connect before we try to correct. Before I just tried to correct, but we were disconnected. I was scared. I was angry. I was disconnected from you. And that's, I'm your mom. I'm your dad. I love you. That's why I was scared. But I didn't connect, and I should have connected first. So I just want you to know I love you. We'll talk about the porn later. Try not to worry about it. So I used damaging admission. I told him what I did wrong. I used front loading, told him what we were going to do next. I used connect before correct, made sure that we were together on this, not separate. And then I told them not to worry about it. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to worry about it. I'm not. I'm not going to worry about it because you know what? I'm going to go take care of myself. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go to yoga. I'm going to take the dogs for a walk. I'm going to go canoe on the lake. I'm going to go talk to someone who's been through this before. I'm going to get support. I'm going to take care of my adult relationships. I'm going to talk to my spouse, my partner, my ex. I'm going to make sure that we're going to be on the same page, or at least if we're on different pages, that we're going to honor each other's page. We don't have to be on the same page, but we do have to keep our mouth shut. If they're going to be on a different page and say, well, that's between you and my ex, whatever. So not only that, but I delayed the consequences. I'm going to take some time with this because really any parenting I do when I'm afraid, frustrated, or fatigued, that's not good parenting. So that's what I would do first, is I'd say, check yourself. Mirrors up, parents. How are you being in this moment? I get it. You're mad. It's okay. You're going to be mad. Go back and say, I was so mad. Oh my God, I acted like an idiot. And that the kid goes, oh wow, we can do that. I can be mad, act like an idiot, and then come back and apologize and fix it. Wow. Okay. I don't have to be perfect right out of the gate. No, because we're not. Let's be clear, mom, dad. We don't know what we're doing. The first time my son was looking at porn when I logged on, and you type that first letter and you see the drop-down box of what that first letter led to, I looked and I was like, oh my God. See, my first connection to pornography was a topless Hawaiian calendar in my dad's drawer that I found out that they put there because they were ready to have the conversation with me. I was a little delayed. And my mom came in and said, hey, you took your dad's calendar. It's okay, but we got your book. And when you're ready to talk about it, we are too. It was brilliant. It was beautiful. It was amazing. And the conversation was really uncomfortable and awkward. And they both participated. And I was very comfortable with it. And I didn't feel shame. But, oh my God, I raised you better than this, kid. You go to church. Why could you? Amber, I want to tell you, I had a family I had to fire as a client. The 12 years old was dealing with a porn addiction. This means they had been kicked out of 3 schools by the age of 12. Now, Amber, you and I know we're talking about trauma here, right? We're not addiction, porn, 12 years old boy. Something happened. We know this. Like there's a clear path. Something has happened. This boy was introduced to this. He didn't find it at 9. He didn't discover it at 6. Someone showed this child pornography. And I sat with him and I said, we worked for 90 minutes. We were throwing axes. Because that's how I get kids to talk. We throw axes. And we were wrapping up. And he was great. This kid wants change. This kid's in for the win. And I said, what's the worst part about all of this? Because you've had lots of consequences. You've been grounded. You've lost electronics. You've been kicked out of schools. You can't play with some friends. But still you go back. What's the worst part? What's the thing you hate the worst? What's the consequences that hurts most? And he said, I feel really ashamed that I showed Jesus pornography. I go, what do you mean? And he goes, well, Jesus is always watching me. And I showed him porn. That's shame. And if there's one thing that a child, an adult can feel about pornography that will keep the addiction going, it's shame. Now, that's not why I said no to the family. That broke my heart. That he thought he's showing the Prince of Peace, the unconditional loving spirit of the universe, pornography. And that's the punishment that he's living with. I fired him because when I told mom what he said, she praised him for being a good Christian. And I knew this kid needed a therapist and needed to go talk to his minister, not a coach and not his mom. And that was a hard place to be in because this is about God now. And this is between him and his minister. And this is about therapy and shame. That's out of my coaching bailiwick. But that's going to prolong the addiction. That's not feeling shame. That's not going to work with addiction. That's going to compound. You will get compound interest on pornography use if you indulge in shame, if you utilize shame. because shame and guilt are the twin pillars of addiction. And so you have to know this. The easy part for me was sitting in this with this child in his darkness. The part that made me knew that this wasn't going to work and that this child had a much longer battle in front of him was that mom was not willing to change or to look at the ideology of her Christianity. Because the way I understood it, you're loved no matter what. That's unconditional love. That's what he thought. Does what I'm saying make sense? Like, this is where ideology and integrity come into play. In my integrity, I could no longer sit with that family and follow their path to recovery. That's a different path. That is not the path to recovery I can walk with them. So I needed to let them go as clients.
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot about what you're saying. I mean, I'm a Christian, and it's funny because this has been something that when you first start telling the story, I'm like, that's not really bad, and but now that you're bringing it up, and I'm thinking back of shame, even in my own life, I'm thinking shame is not, and I think there's some validation to what you're saying there, that just by shaming someone or by them living under the weight of that, and I know from my Christianity and from talking to other Christians, that is never, like, that will hold you down. When you feel that shame, it's so hard to get out from under that.
So let's explain why that's the twin pillar of addiction, because it's very clever for anyone to say that's the twin pillar of addiction, shame and guilt, which is what's identified. But let's say why. So look, shame is an intense emotional experience. The cycle of addiction, and addiction includes pornography, gambling, drugs, alcohol, self-harm, the thing you keep doing to screw up your life and you can't stop. Now it won't stop, and you may even want to stop, but you can't. That's the addiction line, right? You can't stop. And that's because the trigger is an emotional experience. We have an emotion that we are feeling that we do not want to feel. It hurts. It does not work for us. We cannot live life with that emotional experience. Amber, when I was high, I was happy. When I was sober, I was suicidal. That was my life. So I had a lot of people telling me I shouldn't use drugs. But had I stopped, I'd have had to face the feelings I was feeling of being sexually assaulted, of being abandoned by my biological father, of being bullied. I wanted to kill myself. Those are intense emotional feelings. It hurt. That's another way to say it. It was an emotional limb of my body that hurt, right? I hurt my leg and they give me crutches so I don't put weight on the leg. Well, addiction is a crutch. It starts as a crutch. I look at porn and it changes the chemical makeup of my brain very quickly. And I feel better. I'm experiencing something. I feel connected to something. My brain chemistry actually changes. And my world is okay again. Then I have an emotional experience. I express the need. The need is fulfilled. My world is okay. Emotion, need expressed, need fulfilled, world okay. That's the addiction cycle, and it goes around and around and around. Guilt and shame are massively negative emotions. We feel them, and we either express them in a healthy way, going to our minister, going to a coach, a therapist, and saying, I'm feeling a lot of shame. And the coach goes, the minister goes, the therapist says, let's dive in. Let's sit in this darkness of shame. What's coming up for you right now? What's this about? Where do you feel it in your body? How else can we process this energy? That's a therapeutic coaching, spiritual process of dealing with an immense emotion. And it sucks because it's so uncomfortable and embarrassing, and you see your way through it. You warrior through it and you get it out, and you get to experience love of God, of parents, of your therapist and coach again. And you feel okay, and the need was met. You found a healthy way through the process. And maybe talking to that therapist, that coach, or that minister is a crutch, but it's temporary because they're guiding you to put weight back on that limb, right? They show you how to, let's use the crutches and take 2 steps. without them today. Let's use the crutches and then take 3 steps. Let's use the crutches and take 4 steps. Let's take 10 steps and use the crutches for 3, right? And they reverse your use of the crutches. But if no one's there to guide you, then I'm going to smoke pot because it's a crutch. And the moment I smoke, I don't have to feel. The moment I look at porn, I don't have to feel. I don't have to deal with women or feeling awkward about sex or, right? Pornography is a total control mechanism of intimacy with another person, except I'm not intimate and I'm not with them, but I get to control every aspect of it. And it's a crutch until I'm courageous enough to actually go through the discomfort of being with my spouse or partner and saying, I'm not handling this well. And I would really like to, I'd really like to be connected to you in a deeper way. So I gotta stop using a crutch and I gotta start being with you in the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's gonna be hella weird. So maybe we should get a counselor, whatever it is, but it's walking away from the crutches. Addiction is you're not walking away from the crutches. You end up in a wheelchair, and then you end up in bed, and then you end up dead. That's addiction.
So do you think addiction is on the rise with children, say preteens, with pornography, drugs, any addicting type mechanism working in this field? Do you see that?
Yes, but that's not because porn, drugs will always be accessible. It's because our understanding of trauma has changed. See, yours and my generation, the boomer generation, the sandwich generation, they're walking wounded. Gen X is walking wounded. I'm sorry. Right. They're less resilient. No, you're traumatized and you haven't dealt with it. We're actually talking to them about theirs. So is it on the rise? I challenge anybody listening to go take the ACE quiz, ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences. It is a quiz with over 100,000 results, and it's put on by Kaiser and the Center for Disease Control. It's a free 10-question quiz online that asks you about your childhood. 10 questions. And it will show you whether you're traumatized or not. And you can take it for other people. That's a really cool thing. You can answer for your child. You can answer for your mom. You can answer for you. And you'd be like, oh, they're traumatized. That's why they act the way they do. But see, trauma changes brain chemistry and makes us more susceptible to addiction. Mm-hmm. Is there more porn? Yeah. Are drugs more accessible? Yeah. Is violence? Yeah. But these things all traumatize us. Trauma is on the rise. Not because more people are traumatized, but because we now know what trauma actually is. Watching violence on the internet is traumatizing your brain.
How does desensitization play into this?
What a great question. See, because we're dealing with the body's unwillingness to experience the feeling it felt when it was traumatized. Let me explain this to you. That's a great question. And thank you. I don't get asked this a lot. You walk into Target and you have panic attacks. Like your heart flutters, your stomach is upset, and it's hard to catch your breath. And maybe I'm allergic to something at Target. I don't know, like whatever. But to the point where you stop going to Target and you have no idea. I don't like Target. That's all you say. I don't like Target. So I don't go to Target. A couple of years down the road, you start therapy. And you recall an experience where as a child, you got beaten up by an adult. It was your uncle, it was your father, it was your mom, whatever. And the therapist, little by little, session by session, says, how you feeling? I'm going to ask this question. Do you want to answer that? No, I don't want to answer. Okay, we'll approach that next time. Little by little, you tell more of the story. You remember more of the story. And one day you just happen to mention, and the therapist says, what was your mom wearing? Oh, she had this red polo shirt on and was wearing these khaki pants. Oh, I hate khaki pants. And then all of a sudden you realize why you can't go into Target. Right? It has nothing to do with the fact that everybody in Target wearing red shirts and khaki pants want to help you. But it's because when we are traumatized, our brain takes a picture of life. The sight, the smell, the sounds, everything, all senses are lit up because that's what the limbic brain does. Hypervigilance. Remember this moment. Click.
Mhm.
So anything that reminds us of that moment is the trigger. So when I know people we make fun of, oh my God, everybody's always triggered. Okay, so it's been used and abused, but it doesn't change what the brain does with trauma. It takes a picture of the thing that hurt. And anything that reminds us of that picture, our brain goes, no, 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 I don't want to do that. We're going to avoid that. And if we don't avoid it, our brain goes, this is not working for me. I do not feel safe here. And we don't feel good. We don't feel right. Now, desensitization is we ignore it. And we shop at Target anyway. We don't bother to find out why we don't like it. We say things like, oh, you're being ridiculous. And we disconnect from our own body. So our body, it's like our body's whispering to us, hey, this thing happened and you're still carrying it around. And we ignore it. Shh, I don't have time for you. So our body starts to yell. Okay, this doesn't work for me. 6 marriages later, 3 relationships later, 12 jobs later, I'm struggling. You're eating too much. I don't feel good. Okay, listen up. And we still ignore it. Instead of listening to that voice, we get another bag of chips. So we binge watch and drink 2 bottles of wine. At some point, our body slaps us. That's the whisper, shout, and slap. And that's what trauma does. It gets louder the worse life gets. And the slap is rock bottom. That's when the doctor goes, yeah, you had a heart attack. You need to lose some weight. That's when I'm parked on the side of the road across the street from this small church, and Christ appears in front of me and says, you can put your drugs down forever, right now, and never look back. I love you. And I did. And it was the day after the worst day of my life. I didn't lose it. I had traded everything to keep using drugs. And finally hit my knees and said, you got to stop me, God, because I ain't quitting. You're bigger than this. I'm not. You're stronger than this. I'm not. I'm gonna kill myself. So make me quit. And the next day he did. Period. Plain and simple. That's how I ended up in the 12-step rooms. That's rock bottom. That's the slap where my body just said, wake up. You cannot sleepwalk through your life anymore. You are hurting. You're traumatized. You don't have a father. You were sexually assaulted. You were bullied, and you buried it all. And you want to kill yourself on a daily basis, and you act like it hour by hour. Enough. I'm done with this crap. Wake up. And I did. And that's how trauma, that's how we begin our work and our healing journey.
I think what's hard, especially as a parent, is watching our children go through things. And I know as a parent, you have to release control. Like, obviously, you don't have control over them for the long haul. And as they get older, you have to release more and more control. My kids, 8 and 12, and I dread the day that they gain more independence, because, I'm just like, I know they have to learn a lot of things on their own. Yeah. Can you speak to parents that are possibly watching children make wrong decisions and trying to hold it all together? Because that in and of itself is traumatic,
Yes.
Watching your children make these bad decisions and continue getting into situations that are negative in not only in their psyche, but in their life in general.
Yeah. So I'm going to work back to front, because there are no wrong decisions. There are no bad choices. Now I know every parent's going to be like, the hell there's not. But let's explore this for a second. Everything we do as human beings is to facilitate a need. Everything. I'm on the show. You're running the show. The things you and I talked about before the podcast, this thing that this person wants to do, is to facilitate a need that they have right now. They have a need and they're making a choice that may or may not work. It may be a good choice, it may be a bad choice, maybe temporarily it works, but then it won't. And you and I know that. But every choice we make, it's not good and bad. It's cost and payoff. That's the first level. That's the most basic level. Everything we do is based on cost and payoff. Will I get more than this costs me? Why does my kid keep using drugs even though they've been thrown out of school? I grounded them. I took their phone. I took the car. I'm threatening to send them to boot camp, boarding school, residential treatment, and wilderness. And they keep using. And the answer is because what they're getting from the drugs is greater than the punishment that you have created. Say, because if the consequence don't hurt, the consequence don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the truth. That's just human psychology. Whether you budget your finances or not is because of cost and payoff, right? If you don't do your budget, and then at the end of the year, you're struggling financially, but the next year you don't budget, it's because budgeting you perceive is going to cost you more than not budgeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it sounds crazy, but literally take stock. Everything you do is based on cost and payoff. It's January 1st. I'm going to go to the gym every day and take care of and you do. And you bust it out in the gym. You slam the lead around and you are done in 3 days. Why? Because your body hurts so much that the cost just showed up. Right? But 2.5 weeks in, if you stay with it, the payoff starts to show up, doesn't it? And then the attitude changes and you keep going. That's just an example. But now let's go one layer deeper of why there's no bad decisions. Humans have 5 basic needs: safety, power, connection, freedom, and worth. Safety develops in the womb. Power develops at 18 years old, connection at 5 years old. Freedom at somewhere 17, and worth around 28 years old. But we have all of those needs at all times: safety, power, connection, freedom, and worth. In our children's schools, there are posters on the wall that says, "Don't smoke. If you smoke, it'll kill you." And we know this. We don't lie to children about nicotine. It's one of the deadliest poisons on the planet. 1 drop will kill a healthy adult human male. 1 drop, and there are 3 drops in a pack of cigarettes spread out. We are slowly poisoning ourselves to death. Everybody knows this. Every child's commercial of their TV cartoons is re-endorsing and enforcing "don't smoke" campaign. So why do teens smoke? Instead of saying, "Well, you shouldn't smoke, you'll die," they know. So do you let them? No, absolutely not. Can you stop them? No, absolutely not. So what is my step? That's what the question you are asking is, where do I start when I'm watching my child make not bad choices? Because I'm going to explain, smoking a cigarette facilitates a need: safety, power, connection, freedom, and worth. So it's not bad. It's risky, but it's not bad. It works. And if it works, how can it be bad? Because it's risky. So let's call it risky. So how do I stand back, watch my kid make risky choices and just suck it up? No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, first step is understand why the risky decision is being made. For 15 years, I asked teenagers, "Why do you smoke?" Everything I just said, I said to the kids. You know it's bad for you. Why do you smoke? 15 years, they all gave me the same answer.
Mm-hmm.
I get to take a break from my life. I hang out with my friends. I go outside. That's why they smoke. So parents, safety, power, connection, freedom, and worth. Look at what it facilitated. I take a break. Taking a break means you're working. You're doing stuff. You may not like it, so you're taking a break from it. That's freedom. Connection, I hang out with my friends. Worth, I hang out with my friends. Safety, I get to take a break. I go outside.
Mm-hmm.
Right? 1 puff of a cigarette facilitates all 5 basic human needs. That's why they smoke.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing it because they're going against your rules, although that would certainly facilitate power, wouldn't it? So there again, maybe they are doing it because it goes against you. Take it personally if you want, but it's still facilitating a basic human need. Cutting. Why does a child cut? Safety, power, connection, freedom, and worth. A child cuts because it relieves anxiety. It relieves depression. Why do they keep doing it? Because it works. They feel better when they cut. I know that sounds crazy, but if you look at the brain chemistry that changes when a child cuts, when a child smokes pot, when a child drinks, when a child sneaks out, when a child shoplifts, It's changing their brain chemistry and they feel better. Temporarily, it's a crutch, but that's why they do it.
Mm.
So what can you do if you're watching your child make risky choices? Here are the number one, top 4 things that every parent can do to intervene on risky child behavior. Number 1, family dinner. That's it. No media, no phones, not the kids, not the parents. If you're going to have any media at all, it's music. And everybody gets a turn choosing the music. This ain't mom's music hour. This is everybody. Mondays is mom's music hour. Family dinners. Number 2, parents knowing their kids' friends' parents. I broke a bottle in the street in 1983, and every house emptied out into the street. And I got scolded by all my neighbors. You can bet I caught it when I got home because everybody knew my parents. Parents knowing their friends' kids' parents. That's number 2. Number 3, something for your child to do between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock. Because, and I'm going to say an old one here, the idle hands do the devil's work. So put those hands to work. Number 4, what is really going on in our brains? Brain chemistry and brain science, and teaching children and parents understanding this gets us to understand why decisions are made. Not just that's a bad choice and you know better and I raised you better, but why? Why does this make sense to them? Well, it doesn't make sense. Oh, shut it. You're a full-grown, fully developed adult who thinks you know better than everybody else. We all do. I'm that same person. But why does it make sense to the kid? Do we expect the kid to make sense of this? Or do we expect adults to make sense of this behavior? I expect the adults to make sense of weird behavior, strange behavior, risky behavior, not a child. So those are the 4 things that start to pull your kid back from the brink of risk. Now, if they're beyond risk, if they've gone into, they're using drugs daily, weekly, they've been to an acute center twice on a suicide watch, they've threatened to kill themselves, they've hurt somebody else, that's beyond risk. Now it's time to intervene. I promise you it's not about taking their cell phone away. It's about mom or dad, sitting down and saying, are you okay? Things have been really tough. You're really struggling. We're struggling too. And I would like to believe that if you changed, I would be happy. But I know better because I'm an adult. And what I know as an adult is, if my happiness is dependent on my child's behavior, I'm screwed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into recovery. Because some of the choices you make have terrified me. I'm scared. I'm angry. I'm afraid. I'm not sleeping well. And I need to go into recovery because this isn't working for me. I'm done. I'm done living like this. I'm done doing this. So there's going to be some changes in the house. And by God, kiddo, I don't know what they are yet. I love you so much and I'm so scared. I'm so angry. But I also know being a scared, angry parent isn't going to help. So I'm going into recovery. I don't know what it looks like. I'll get back to you on that. But I do know I'm going to have to make some changes in the house, and I'm pretty sure some of those changes will affect you. And for that, I'm sorry. I hope you join me in recovery. But if you don't, well, it's your strategy for life. You'll find out if it works. You're smart. You'll figure this out. But I know what I'm doing isn't working for us. So I'm going to change.
That's so good.
And that's you showing the way. That's you lighting the path. That's you taking leadership of the family. That's you taking your home back and saying, I am the adult. I have the strongest nervous system. This is my house and my life. I'm taking it back. I hope you follow. I really, really do, because it's going to get worse for you. But you'll figure it out, kiddo. I love you. I got your back. No matter what. Will always love you. I will always come for you. Life and limb, I'm there. I will pull you from the fire. But I am not giving you money to set fires anymore. I'm done with that. And that's where the value system conversation, where you sit down, veers up, parents. What am I doing that is allowing this child to continue this behavior?
Yeah.
Are you being permissive, enabling? Oh, I hate those words. No. I don't believe in codependency. I believe in prodependency. As a parent, you've done everything you thought you should do, and it got you here. And if where you are doesn't work, then do something else. But yelling louder is not doing something else.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, that's not real.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the mirrors up of saying, wait a minute, I'm paying for the internet that they're looking at porn on. Why would I pay for my child to look at porn? Wait a minute, I'm paying their car insurance and they're driving drunk. I'm not paying for that. Guess what? You stop paying for their car insurance, they may have to get a job, which would be at least 6 hours that the child's not using. It's like, that's a start.
Yeah.
That's harm reduction. That's responsibility.
Yeah.
It's choice.
Yeah, that's so good. That is, you have so much good advice that I feel like, it's challenging for parents, but this is probably why, just like in anything else, it is so valuable that if you are in crisis, to have a coach or someone that you can that knows how to navigate through these things, because parenting is, like, I'll say it again, it is one of the hardest things I have ever done. And I'm like, I believe in coaching for everything. I need a coach in every area of life. And I've never thought about parental coaching, but I believe it's valuable. I know that we're getting right there at the hour, and I would love to continue to just have you, tell us more and more. But why don't you tell us how someone could get in contact with you if they listen to this and they're like, I need this. My child is in crisis. Where would they find you?
Well, thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to come on and not only talk and hopefully guide and coach people who are struggling, parents who are struggling, people in general, but then for the opportunity to talk about how they can follow up with me. I appreciate that, Amber. My website is parentingteensthatstruggle.com. There you'll find my podcast, Beyond Risk and Back. There you'll find my parenting masterclass, which is the beyond risk, the red light, the at risk, the yellow light, and the good stuff, the green light. Your kids are doing good. How do we get to great? What do we do? Let's talk about rites of passage. Let's talk about volunteer. Let's talk about bills at home. Let's talk about budgeting. And like I go through the entire gamut of parenting. 56 classes and it's always $99. That's not a sale price. I want every parent to be able to afford it, so I keep it smart priced. parentingteensthatstruggle.com. I have free videos there. I have free downloads there. It's everything that I do for parents. And there's also a book if any parents are concerned about video games. I did write a book on video game dependency and addiction in children. You'll find that there as well. And I have another book coming out November 15th about personalities, the warriors, the wizards, the jesters, and the bards, the 4 prime archetypes. Which one are you? What kind of parent are you? What kind of business person are you? And who are your children? That's coming out November 15, 23. You'll be able to find it on Amazon. Just look for the 4 prime archetypes and Aaron Heuy. And that's it. And I want to say one more thing, if it's okay, Amber. I'll keep it short. I promise. Maybe not. As a parent coach, as someone who gets to come in when things are really bad and the darkness is really intense, we are not going to indulge in what you did. And I don't want, as parents, I don't want us to sit down and try to analyze everything we've done, and I shouldn't have, and I could have, and I would have. Let it go. It's a cul-de-sac. I call it the parenting cul-de-sac. It's the same 4 houses. Look, I was a drug addict when my daughter was in the most formidable years of her life. The best thing that I've done is apologize for what I did and moved on, because that's what we want from our kids, right? Say you're sorry, don't do it again. Mean it. Don't be sorry that you got caught. Be sorry and be able to tell me why you're sorry. And then don't do it again, because if you do, you weren't sorry. My God, I am so regretful and sorry for who I was at the beginning of her life. And so I made sure I never did it again. That's moving forward. We cannot go back as parent coaches and parents, even in deep crisis, and say, well, you shouldn't have done that. Are you kidding me? We're here. That's it. That's what's real. We screw up. We screw up our kids, we screw up ourselves, and we mess up. None of us know what we're doing. Show me the handbook you got, because I didn't get one. Trying to write one, but it's not for everyone. Mm-hmm. So let's not go down the cul-de-sac of what we did as parents. Let's talk about what we're going to do next. Let's talk about the changes we're going to make. And I would expect your children to be able to stick to the changes and intentions that they say they have, that they say they're going to make, as much as you are able to. When are you going to trust your kid? About the same time your kid starts to trust you. When are you going to relax into this work? About the same time your kid's going to relax into theirs. We are connected to our children. So you screwed up. Yesterday you didn't have your finest parenting moment. It's okay. Make tomorrow your best day and then take it from there.
That's so good. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for the work that you're doing and the lives that you're changing through your work in both parents and in the youth, because I truly believe they are our future. And it burdens me deeply to know that the more I work with trauma, the more I talk to people about trauma, that there is so much trauma in the world. And this is just in adults. But that is reflecting onto the youth, and we're raising up a generation of more kids with more trauma, and it's heartbreaking. So thank you for everything that you're doing. And I do encourage anybody who is struggling through these or navigating through these rough waters, reach out to Aaron and get some help, and get your kids help, the help that they need to navigate through this life, because it's not easy. So thank you, Aaron. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us today.
Thank you, Amber. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for listening to Through the Trauma podcast. If you have found value in this episode or believe in the mission behind what we are doing, please subscribe so that you never miss any future episodes. Also, be sure to check out our transformation project at transformationthroughtraumaproject.com, where we help inspirational stories get heard on a larger scale through multiple platforms. If you know someone who can benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Until next time.